And President Biden is in Helsinki this morning, welcoming the newest member of NATO. Finland joined last year, a move that doubled the alliance's border with Russia. The trip is meant to show NATO's expanding power and influence against Russian President Vladimir Putin. But Biden's visit also marks a stark contrast to Donald Trump's trip to Finland's capital almost exactly 5 years ago. We all remember that. Then
Many people are calling that the Lemire Summit.
It was. Then President Trump famously stood by Vladimir Putin and defended the Russian president's denials of election interference, going against the findings of U.S. intelligence on the world stage.
Just now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did. My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe? My second question is, would you now, with the whole world watching, tell President Putin, would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server. Why haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server.
Jonathan looks a little scruffy.
Yeah, first of all, Donald Trump actually siding with Vladimir Putin, an ex-KGB agent, guy that kills politicians that oppose him and kills journalists who write bad things about him. It's quite a glare that Vladimir Putin, I've never noticed it before, gave to Jonathan Lemire there after the question was asked. And Willie, if you'll remember, Lemire, we've cleaned him up a little bit. He looked kind of scruffy there.
He did.
He was like a Southie. He was like a South Boston punk there. And I don't know if you remember, but he got in a shoving match with some of Vlad's punks. I think this was the location, pushing each other out. I mean, rough days.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, Willie, cleaned up now, but he still has the dark soul of a South Boston punk.
He does, and he went toe-to-toe with Vladimir Putin's security forces and lived to tell the tale. And if you look at that side by side, certainly has changed his approach to his hair in the 5 years since Helsinki.
Well,
credit to the hair and makeup department here at MSNBC. But let's give him a chance to defend himself. That is Jonathan Lemire, White House bureau chief at Politico, of course, the host of Way Too Early, joining us from Helsinki. Also with us here at the table in New York, president, founder of Eurasia Group and G0 Media, Ian Bremmer. Good morning, Ian. Good to have you with us. So, John, we'll let you defend yourself on the hair 5 years ago at Helsinki, but more broadly, the contrast that we're seeing 5 years later with this president in that same city.
Yeah, we were all so much younger then, weren't we? Yes, credit to the hair and makeup team there at MSNBC for my glow up ahead of my return here to Helsinki. But it is a remarkable parallel that a U.S. president has returned to the Finnish capital 5 years to the week, nearly 5 years to the day since the last time we heard an American president here. And of course, you just played it. Donald Trump standing alongside Vladimir Putin, siding with Putin over his own government about the 2016 election interference, taking Putin's side. And now President Biden is here touting the addition of Finland to an alliance meant as a bulwark to stop that very same Russian leader. The world has changed dramatically in the 5 years since our last time in Helsinki. And we'll be hearing from President Biden later today, coming off the heels of that NATO summit, which we'll get to in a minute. And he will talk about how Finland really strengthens the alliance, and also just how all of the West, the idea of multilateral alliances, has been revitalized because of that man, Vladimir Putin. And of course, the shadow of Donald Trump still looms large here in Helsinki. He is, of course, a leading contender to be president again in 2024, were he to win. And that is something that gives these allies great anxiety, his potential return. The idea that the United States is back, but there are concerns as to back for how long.
Hey, Jonathan, 5 years is a snap of a finger in terms of history. Of course, 5 years ago, it was before you outfitted yourself in better suits and shirts and ties and stuff like that.
Sure.
But could you please talk a bit about what is a striking contrast to many people? Just the visuals from the President Biden's trip this week and when you were there 5 years ago with President Trump. There was a particularly striking visual yesterday of President Biden with his arm around President Scholz of Germany, both of them laughing and smiling with one another. And it was a striking contrast to what had happened during the Trump administration.
No question there, Mike. Let's remember that Trump's visit to Helsinki 5 years ago came just days after he was in NATO at the Brussels, the NATO's headquarters, and threatened to pull the United States out of that alliance. That was also 5 years ago. He was talked out of it, but he nearly detonated the signature post-World War II multinational alliance. And instead now we have President Biden here expanding it. Finland is in. Sweden is on a path to be in as well. And you mentioned it. He certainly enjoys a warm camaraderie with a number of the European leaders. And he had a positive meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, which was the real headline yesterday. Zelensky had come to Vilnius really angry, thought that NATO was dragging their feet, that he was frustrated that they were not going to get his country into the alliance. But after 24 hours of diplomacy, meeting with Biden and others, he changed his tune. And in fact, in his meeting with President Biden yesterday, I was able to ask President Zelensky, was he satisfied? Was this enough? Did he get enough assurances from the allies? And he said he did. There was more military assurance, more security promised. Yes, Ukraine, he still wants to join NATO eventually. But for the moment, that tension has dissipated. And now the return to focusing on its counteroffensive against Russia.
Let's watch that moment. Jonathan Lemire asking President Zelensky yesterday at the NATO summit about how he feels now about these security guarantees from the United States and from NATO.
President Zelensky, are you satisfied with what you got from NATO? You were so frustrated yesterday. Is this enough? Are you satisfied, sir?
I think at the end of summit, we had great unity from our leaders and security guarantees that the success for this summit. I think so, but it's my opinion. Thank you.